heading to the Niners side of things, how much could change in a week? Really? Right around 7 days ago, I had this team as the best team in football. This was an offense that was averaging nearly 40 a game. Their defense, while had issues, seemed like they could always get a stop when needed. And now, I don't know. I feel like everybody's kind of done such a 180 on the Niners, and frankly, they kind of deserve it, the way they played on Saturday night. Let's start with the obvious. This game will be dead in the water if Trent Williams or Ricky Pearsall do not play. I imagine Trent is going to be back, which is not what I would have guessed. Heading into today, I would have thought that we'd seen the inverse. I thought Ricky was going to come back and Trent was going to be either out or on some form of side field. But it looks like we're going to get Trent back, which is huge. And it looks like Ricky's hopefully going to be back. And we got some potential update about Fred Warner, but I'm not even going to talk about that because it's not going to affect this game. You need them back in some capacity. Even if Ricky's on a snap count, I'm not a big proponent for players playing injured. I just don't think they play very well. I think their backup is usually more than well suited to do that. But in Trent's case, Austin Pleasance did not have a great game. There was so much tension that had to be helped on his side, like with George Kittle chipping or McCaffrey blocking, that it the offense. So we do need Trent back in this one. As for other injuries, Tatum, Bethune, and D. Winters are likely out. Tatum, we know, is on IR. He's done for the postseason. But D missed practice today as well. It looks like he's going to be out, and this may be disrespectful, but that is probably the biggest upgrade the Niners could have made, is getting those guys out of the lineup. Because if you want to look at, the Niners defense has been pretty solid, even through all the injuries. And then Michael Williams goes down in week 10. And then the dam starts to open up a bit. It starts to look bad, right? But then the offense kicks in, and then they get an easy stretch. And then the defense starts to look dog shit right around when Tatum Bethune came back from injury. And D. Winters was also there, but he also just wasn't playing great. He was playing the worst ball of this season the last few weeks. And frankly, having those guys out is going to be a huge upgrade. Because now the Niners can bring in Eric Kendricks at the Mike linebacker spot, who played really great ball for them whenever he's had the opportunity. And Garrett Wallow is potentially supposed to fill in at the will, and he's not good either, but he's better than D. Winters, so I don't know. I really hope that it ends up being Kaiser White, who is a guy they picked up off the practice squad. Or not the practice squad. I think he was just available a few days ago, because he's probably better than Garrett Wallow. It's sad that we're talking postseason football, and I have to bring up Garrett Wallow. That's just a side point. Unfortunately, Jair Brown will play. He's had a rib injury, but he seems to be recovered from that, which is not particularly great for the Niners because he's been, alongside the linebackers, the biggest weaknesses of this defense. So if I'm Philadelphia, throw the ball at his direction every play, run the ball at his direction. He is not going to stand up to you in any way. And I saw people talking about potentially the corners as a big mismatch, something to look at as far as the Eagles receivers on the Niners corners. I don't really see that so much. Renardo Green is he's our second corner. He's not particularly great, but the one thing he is that he's this big. He's a fairly big guy, and he can play really well in man-to-man coverage. And he's not very good with lateral speed. And the Eagles receivers don't necessarily have that. This is not a team that's going to burn you. They're a team that's going to try and head top you, right? Fucking AJ Brown right over his head. But I think Renardo Green and Lenore are pretty well suited in that respect. Lenore has just been awesome in coverage, and I think he's going to keep that up. I hope that he gets Devonta Smith and we get Renardo on AJ, just because I think that stylistically they play better. But if AJ starts cooking Renardo, of course, you'd flip-flop it. But moving away from the defense, the best match individual or unit-on-unit matchup probably of the whole weekend is this Niners offense on the Eagles defense. To start with, there's a big mismatch in that respect too, though, in that Eagles interior defensive line of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis versus the Niners, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, and Spencer Burford, even though Pooney's a pretty good player. Brendel in particular there's a lot of room for the Eagles to fuck up the game with just that. The Niners really need to run the ball to the outside to the right, run behind Colton, run behind Pooney. I would love for them to copy the Rams script in that respect, where we were talking about Derek Brown and A'Shawn Robinson, and how they threw a double at Derek Brown and they ran away from A'Shawn. I would throw a double at Jordan Davis, or I'd throw a double at Jalen Carter and run away from Jordan Davis. I think that's your best shot at getting runs off against this team. Because if you try and go inside zone, I don't see it. If you try and go duo, maybe you could. You can get duo blocks on both of those two. But I don't trust whoever has Brendel on their duo to hold up. So that's not going to be great either. And Brock is going to need to have a great, great game. Like he's been having the last 6 weeks, with the exception of Seattle. He didn't have a good game, but he didn't have a bad game either. So Purdy really does thrive against what I like to, or not what I like to call, what are called static defenses. So those are defenses that don't motion post snap. They just, whatever look they are, they will stay with it. And that's the reason why they had so much success against Chicago, because Chicago just ran a lot of, again, static cover 3. So you have 3 guys deep. And Purdy, I mean, he's going to eat that shit for breakfast. But Philly is not like Chicago. Vic Fangio is a freaking wizard, so everything looks like too high coverage, right, where you have 2 safeties back, and then from there it can be literally anything. It always motions right as the snap hits. It's going to completely shift on him. So it's going to be a big game for Purdy mentally. Can Purdy read the defense quickly, especially when that Philly defense line can probably get there in 2 seconds or less. So it's going to have one hell of a task in front of him. But when it comes to reading coverages, I'm not sure if I take any quarterback over Purdy. So that's the good news for the Niners. Going to be a great chess match between those two, between Purdy and Shanahan and Fangio. That is going to be awesome. That is probably the best matchup you'll get of the weekend. That is, I'm so excited for that. Kyle needs to not get cute. By that, what I mean is that 4th down deep shot call they had against Seattle was open. Yes, I get it. It technically worked. But you also have to understand who you are playing and and the edge rushers and the defensive line they have. You don't want Brock turning his back on a 4th and 1 and letting all those Eagles rushers get to him like Seattle's did. So keep things simple. Let Brock just attack. Let Brock work. Try and get a run game going. That's going to be huge in this one if they can force those Philly defensive linemen to have to take a step back, not be able to tee off on every play. And in particular, some guys that I think the Niners can attack, their mismatches. They can attack Adoree Jackson like frankly, every team has this year. They can attack Nakobe Dean, who is coming back off injury. Nakobe Dean's a thumper, but he's just shorter. Purdy can definitely layer the ball over his head. That's just kind of how it is. And then the safeties, the Eagles are missing Andrew Mukbaka, who got injured right around midseason. So it is Reed Blankenship and Marcus Epps. And those guys, well, I think Reed Blankenship's a good player. They are gettable. They're not infallible. I would much rather have them be tested over, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean or Zach Bond. So I think you just have to pick and choose your battles in that respect. On the Eagles side of things, they're getting healthy. They have 21 of their 22 starters back. They have significantly more talent than the Niners. On paper, by the roster, almost every position outside of quarterback, outside of right guard, of all things, actually. Running back, I think McCaffrey's been better than Saquon, but that's just because of McCaffrey's receiving ability, not necessarily rushing. Outside of that, the Eagles kind of just wash them at every spot. They have such a huge talent gap in this game. But I cannot express how much of a coaching gap there is in this game. And that might piss off Eagles fans a lot. I get that. That is fair. I would be a little pressed too. But I watched so much tape to get ready for this podcast, more than I have for any other, because I don't usually do preview shows. I want to be able to provide something here besides the, national media. This quarterback's under a lot of pressure. Josh Allen, this is such a big game for him. And have that be the extent of my analysis. I would love to give you guys something to actually watch for in the game. So I did a ton of homework for this podcast. When I tell you, a good chunk of my time was spent just trying to understand one half of Eagles offensive ball. It is so hard to understand. Some of these plays I would watch back for 5 minutes, and they were 15-second plays. I would just keep rewinding trying to understand. I had to download a thing to draw on the screen so I could try and figure out where people were supposed to be or what they were supposed to do or what the thinking was. This Eagles offense, oh my God, it is one of the worst coached units I have frankly ever seen. Considering the talent they have, the Raiders, the Commanders probably had worse coach units, Commanders defense, Raiders offense. But in terms of how much talent they have, where they should be, this is really something. Patullo is horrible. But god damn, at some point, Sirianni needs some blame too. And I know Sirianni was, I know he was supposed to assist with play calling in the Buffalo game. That's the tape I watched. Oh my God, it was hell to get through. It was not fun. I love watching film. This is my sort of thing. It's my nerd shit that I love. And it was actively not fun trying to understand it. For some reason, Patullo loves hitch routes more than I have frankly seen any coordinator love hitch routes. To the point where it was working a bit against the Bills' zone coverage in the first half. But then you go to the second half and you watch, why did the Eagles have -3 yards in the second half? It's because they kept trying to run the same 10-yard curls against man, like tight man coverage. And the Bills defenders were never, ever confused as to maybe it's a double move. Nope. Every time they were just chilling right there on the hitches. And it led Jalen Hurts just having to scramble the pocket and trying to find something. But there was never anything. Even Jalen Hurts also had a few missed balls in that game, but that wasn't the reason that that became a game when they should have dominated it, really. And it should have been done by the end of the third quarter. This guy is beyond me, man. Some other stuff outside of coaching. The interior offensive line for the Eagles is pretty bad. They're kind of riding off the reputation of last year, and that's because Landon Dickerson is playing through injury pretty clearly. He's not playing his best ball. Ian's very much benefited last year from having those two amazing guards next to him in a healthy Dickerson and Becton. Jurgens is bad. I'm going to be blunt here. I don't know if he's dealing with some ailment, but he is flat out bad. He kills 5 to 10 plays per game, and on a lot of them, he's killing run plays, which is brutal for this Eagles team. His PR is insane. I don't know if he got that just because he was the backup to Jason Kelce, but Cam Jurgens is not a good football player right now. And their right guard, Tyler Steen, is also the same way. He is not good at all. So if you look at some of the runs that the Eagles have, they just get blown up right away. A defense tackle sheds off 2 guys, or there's a miscommunication and it leaves some rusher right there in the backfield ready to take him down. And a combination of bad execution on the interior offensive line and just god-awful coaching has really killed the Eagles' offense. The fact that was a Week 17 game is beyond me. That looked like preseason or Week 1 in terms of how many guys were just missing assignments, miscues, bad calls, etc. Oh my God. Moving away from that side of the ball, the defense, it's better than I honestly thought it was. I was watching some of the tape. They're a really, really good unit. Phillips, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt in particular is better than I thought he was. He's been making more of an impact in the last, or whenever he's healthy in the last few weeks. That D-line is just so good. And we've seen this defense with and without Jalen Carter. Without Jalen Carter, they look solid, but not particularly great. But then you add in Carter, and oh my God, they're really, really good. They're going to be getting him back for this game. And he is a game wrecker. He poses so many problems for the Niners with that interior offensive line. Vic Fangio, of course, we talked about him a little earlier. That matchup between him and Shanahan is something. That is really fun. They've played against each other 4 times, but we've been kind of deprived of good games just because those were really bad Shanahan teams that he played against. This will be the first time that we get Fangio versus Shanahan, where they both have really good units. Shanahan has a good quarterback, and that'll make it really fun. Jalen Hurts, the last time he played Robert Saleh, was not particularly good. That was the Jets game from, I want to say, 2 years ago, when that was the first loss they had of the year, and he had 3 interceptions, and that Eagles team ended up falling apart later in the season. But granted, that was so long ago. That was a whole different defense, so I don't know how much you can take away from it. The Niners have been better in terms of containing quarterbacks, and Jalen Hurts has said himself part of the game plan is for him to run less, which is something. Again, Kevin Patullo, not the smartest guy in the office, but if Jalen Hurts can get going with his legs, that'll be really killer for this Niners team, because I feel past 2 seconds, that coverage is going to let up, and more than anything, that pass rush is just not particularly good at all, and if he starts running, it's going to make it even harder. They'll 100% have chances to press this team deep, with deep shots to Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. Hell, I think they could even get Goddard over the middle with some 20 to 30-yard chunks. Even with the way the Niners run defense played against Seattle, I don't see that happening in this Philly game. Just because, if you look, they shut down Jonathan Taylor. They held him to less than 50 yards. They did a relatively good job against the Bears' backs. I just think the Niners' defense had a really, really bad game in terms of the run. They were just getting bad execution from their backers. The edges weren't holding their blocks on the outside. Jair Brown, as we talked about 2 days ago, did not have a great game at all in run support. I imagine that'll just get better, especially with the linebackers basically being replaced. So I don't see Saquon in that ground game finding rhythm, especially just because, again, oh my God, this Kevin Patullo is so bad. So my prediction for the game, I think the talent gap of the coaching staff makes up for a lot of the talent deficiencies in this one. I don't see Philly having a Seattle-like performance on defense. So because of that, I think the Niners end up taking this one in an upset. If you want to call that biased, It probably is to a certain degree. I think that's fair. I'm not going to necessarily push back on you in that respect. But frankly, Philly coaching, Kevin Patullo is just so bad. I get a lot of shades of 2023. 2023's Eagles team, and that's a team that got destroyed by Tampa in the wild card. Niners 24, Philly 17 is my guess at it.